No other matchup in the conference may equal it when it comes to importance for the particular programs and for the division race, Dave. When we talk about Florida and Tennessee and setting up you and Mike, I just sit back and let you guys go because you two are the best at setting this matchup. It's what, 11 straight at this point for the Florida Gators?
That's right, 11 straight. And the last 2 years have been, drama-filled with 1-point wins for Florida, and a fourth quarter comeback last year that Gator fans don't forget right now. 11 straight. What happens? As Florida travels to Knoxville Saturday, game day is going to be there. 3:30 CBS game. There's, I think, maybe just a hint loss of luster on the Florida side when Luke Del Rio went down. Austin Appleby is now as a starter. How does he come in and run the train for Florida? It's 19 touchdowns, 19 interceptions at Purdue, 2,800 yards worth of passing. He even admitted himself that he might have forced some throws because they were playing down so much at Purdue and feel like he had to do more than he really needed to do. So I want to see how he plays within the Jim McElwain, Doug Nussmeier offense. Can Florida get the running game going to help him a little bit? At its best, when Florida was against Kentucky this year, Florida had the run game going. The play action was set up for success for shots down the field. So if Florida can get the running game going, that's going to be the biggest aspect, I think, for the Florida offense. And can they get off to a fast start? Playing on the road, I think in order for Florida to feel really comfortable in this game, if they can get up and make Josh Dobbs have to pass, and try and control that run game to where if Tennessee's having to fight back a little bit, Florida will have them kind of where they want them. I don't think that will happen. I think it will be a close game here on out. And the Florida defense, it's probably the best unit on the field Saturday in my mind. It's going to be, will they have to carry the Florida offense? By talking about it with Mike last night, we had our Gators podcast. I want to see how Florida plays. Do they attack Dobbs? Do they bring a lot of pressure and take their chances with him trying to make mistakes, or do they sit back, contain him a little bit, and make Josh Dobbs beat them with his arm? They're going to tell Jalen Tabor, you have your man. Quincy Wilson, you got your man. Safeties don't get beat deep. Everybody else, it's the run. You're spying Dobbs and looking for the running back. So I'll be very interested to see how the Florida, the plan, and does it change? If they don't have success with the pressure, does it change throughout the game? So I do expect a hard-fought contest. Of course, about as even as they can get. I'll go with a Gator win by about 3 points, but not in any way do I feel very confident about that. But it's almost there, not quite yet to those classic 1990s and early 2000s matchups.
Hey, Mark, just to piggyback on that, I think this game is of critical importance to the Tennessee program. I think it's more than just the most important game of the season. It's probably the most important game they've had in 5 years. If you look at the Butch Jones era, this is the game in which they have to either take the step forward and get to where the Tennessee program wants to get, or they continue on in their march to mediocrity. If you look, usually when you have these types of games that are program defining, you get them. You have to look at them in retrospect. For Tennessee, 2011 Kentucky loss was one of those. It was the last program defining game. That was kind of our ascent or a descent to the abyss. Before that was 2005 Vanderbilt. That's kind of when we started the downward spiral to where we find ourselves today. This is a game that we know going into it is a program-defining game. There is so much pressure on Tennessee to win this game. Once we get to the field, the story is twofold. One, the injuries on defense. Can the linebackers fill in for Darren Kirkland Jr. and can the secondary survive Cam Sutton's absence? I think they're going to try to stop the run, and like Dave said, expect Appleby to try to take a couple deep shots with Callaway. If Tennessee can keep Callaway in check, I think they're going to have a chance to stop the run and get some pressure on Appleby and hold that Florida offense in check, particularly in Knoxville. The other story is going to be on the opposite side of the field, Tennessee's offensive line. They get Chance Hall back this week. That's going to be a huge difference in the game. but still that Florida defense is really good. Probably the best defense, second best defense in the conference. I'd say it's probably one of the top 10, top 15 defenses in college football. So Tennessee's offense is going to have to be able to control the line of scrimmage and get 4 yards on first down. Tennessee's offensive line is going to have to show up and play better than what they've played. I think Tennessee is going to have to get 200 yards of rushing to win the game, and I think probably the key stat of the game will be average yards to go on second down for Tennessee. If Tennessee can keep second down average to 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5, 2nd and 6 in that range, I think they'll have a chance to put together several drives. Several scoring drives. They'll get more plays than Florida, and they'll be able to win the time of possession. If the average to go yard at second down is more than 6, you're going to see Tennessee forced into a lot of passing downs, and that's not where they're comfortable. That's not how that offense finds rhythm. In the end, I think Tennessee gets it done. Just because I can't fathom another Tennessee loss. I think it's going to be 23-20. I think the Vols get it done. I think they show up and they put everything together for the first time this year.
I think this Florida defense is going to prove itself as a top 5 defense nationally, maybe a top 3 defense. I think they're really, really good, and I just don't see defense played that well in most of the other conferences. The thing I want to throw out to both of you is I've got a pretty good feel for the offensive and defensive play for both teams because I know the personnel. Have either of you seen anything in special teams from either of your teams that would give you an advantage or a cause for concern, Dave?
Well, Florida finally has a field goal kicker this year, so that starts, finally step one there is a little bit better. A lot of people are pointing to, this being a close game where Eddie Pinheiro, maybe just because his coming out party, Florida, yes, he's done well, 2 misses against Kentucky. But it's the first 3 games were in the spotlight. This is the spotlight game. It's going to be a close game. There will be field goals having to be kicked. He doesn't have a lot of experience. This is his first road game. How does that go? And so it's and speaking of him, he's not going to give Tennessee any. I don't think coaching will come into this. Don't overthink it. Kick the ball out of the back of the end zone every time. Don't give Tennessee a chance. They probably have the best special teams return units, kick return and punt return in the nation. Don't give them the chance. Just kick it out of the back of the end zone. And of course, it speaks for itself. Antonio Callaway at punt returner, one of the nation's best punt returners. He can change a game in a heartbeat. So there's the little special teams and what can change. Eddie Pinheiro will probably get a chance in the fourth quarter, in a tight game to keep Florida in it or maybe even win the game.
Yeah, Mark, Tennessee had great special teams play last year. I think they had the highest or the best starting field position average of any team in the FBS, due mostly in part to the All-American kick returner Evan Berry. Every team we've played so far this year has kicked out of the end zone. I think he's had 1 chance at a return that was called back on a penalty. He did get out to about the 45-yard line. So I don't foresee Florida allowing him to return. If they do, I think that would be a mistake. Of course, Cam Sutton's out. He was our All-American punt returner last year, so Tennessee was returning 2 All-Americans at return. Alvin Kamara will probably handle those duties. He has the ability to break long ones as well. Here's what scares us about special teams. They were great last year, absolutely fantastic. They've had penalties the last 2 games. If Tennessee can play a clean special teams game, no penalties on returns, I think they'll probably win the special teams battle. Aaron Medley had a little bit of trouble early last season, but closed the second half of last year solid. Of course, missed the 55-yarder, I believe, at Florida last year for the win. Pushed that just a tad bit right, but he got right in the second half of last year. I think he is as good or maybe even better than Pinheiro. And our punter, Trevor Daniel, last year was had a tremendous season. Again, a little bit shaky early on this season, but I think the team's going to come out and Trevor Daniel put a ball inside the 1-yard line in the fourth quarter when Georgia was trying to make the comeback. I think he can be a weapon for us too. I think Tennessee actually has the edge on special teams.
I think the worst news I heard this week is that Tennessee's going to come out in those ugly, smoky gray uniforms. Hey,
those uniforms were voted best alternate uniform in college football last year. They're
by
sharp.
Who? Rocky Top?
No.
I think I did see
I want to see a lot of orange when I see these 2 teams get together. It's going to take me back to Spurrier and Fulmer on the sideline if I see a bunch of orange and a little bit of blue, but now I'm going to see gray.
Well, Mark, that goes back to what I was. Tennessee is trying to exercise all of their demons. Game days in Knoxville, I think we're 0-6 against Florida when game days there. Checker Neyland, I think we're 1-3 for Checker Neyland. Smoky Grays, I think we're 1-3 in Smoky Grays. And Florida backup quarterback, we're 0-2 in the last 3 years against Florida backup quarterbacks. So we're trying to exercise all of our demons on Saturday. You know, one shot, one kill deal.
All right, it's Florida, Tennessee, and of course, Mike and Dave have predicted, as we would expect. I will have my predictions a little bit later in the week on Mark Rogers TV, where I shouldn't jinx myself by mentioning that I'm 7-0 in my confidence picks against the spread, but I cannot fathom picking in confidence either one of these teams in this one. So I'm just going to pick the game, but as a confidence pick, no way.